All right. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to tonight's program. Tonight, we're talking about President Trump and his ban on his proposed ban on institutional investors. So it'll be interesting to see what folks think about that. And then a lot of real estate stuff happening in the news. So we'll talk about that this evening. And um, I did a poll recently on my channel, and I asked the channel what they thought in terms of what people thought in terms of, should institutional investors be banned from buying any additional new homes? And I gave that number for what constituted an institutional investor as 500 single family properties and got a big response out of it. 57 folks responded, and 86% said yes, and 14% said no. So there seems to be some agreement in terms of that goes. But it's been making the news lately. And with that, looks like we have some folks in the chat. So hopefully you can hear me okay. If you can't, just let me know. And we'll kick things off. We're going to try playing a little video. So we'll see how this works out.
This morning, a potential game changer in the housing market. President Trump says he wants to slam the door on Wall Street investors buying single-family homes.
Increasingly over the last 4 or 5 years, I think America is short essentially like 4 million homes, and that's translating into real affordability issues.
Trump announcing plans to ban institutional investors from snatching up real estate and driving up housing prices, saying for a very long time, buying and owning a home was considered the pinnacle of the American dream. That American dream is increasingly out of reach for far too many people. Wall Street said to be blindsided by Trump's move. Companies like Blackstone and other major landlords seeing their stock prices drop. Trump pushing Congress to approve the ban, saying people live in homes, not corporations. Senator Chuck Schumer responding, saying Senate Democrats tried to do this last year, Republicans blocked it. At the heart of the issue, affordability for first-time homebuyers. The median price of an existing home in the U.S. now tops $400,000 with mortgage rates near 6%. But critics say large investors own just 1 to 3% of single-family homes. And they say Trump's proposal does not address other big issues like the shortage of new building projects and skyrocketing construction costs.
We're talking about a really small share of purchase activity and an even smaller share of the overall housing stock when it comes to these large institutional investors.
Trump says he plans to lay out more housing and affordability proposals in the coming weeks.
All right. And we see we got James is in the house. Thank you. Hello, James. And then, of course, MH08 says, on some level, this has to benefit Wall Street. Otherwise, this wouldn't be happening. That is a very good point. And then here's the other thing, too. I kind of thought about that, too, because I kind of thought, well, they just said single family homes. They didn't say anything else. And private equity is getting their hands into a whole bunch of stuff. But I don't know. At some level, I agree with you on that, MH08, because I think owning a single family home is as an investment property. Don't get me wrong, I've done it, but I don't think it is as profitable as people think. And I think there's also a political angle on this as well. But um, what he's talking about is, and we'll dive a little bit more into that as well, is some of these large investors. And from what I gathered, it was defined as owning 1,000 properties or more. Okay. But I've had it on my channel where there's some folks that think that you shouldn't be allowed to own 3 properties. You know, uh, they're completely against the idea of investment property completely, and I think that's a little bit. Uh, you know, you got to remember, investors do supply someone with a home. So if all of a sudden you made investing to where you banned it to where you couldn't own 3 properties or more, then be careful what you get there, because then, that would mean everybody would have to be a buyer, and then where would people rent? Renting does have a function. Now, what had the problem is everything, it's all about affordability. Everybody's been squeezed out of, the ability to or not everybody, but a large chunk of the population has just been squeezed out of the, home ownership, the ability to obtain home ownership. And we've talked about that in the past where you had, you know, buyers, the median age of the first time home buyer is now 40 years old. Okay. Uh, so that, but some of these, what happens, and then here's the other thing too. Okay. And I want to make sure I covered all my points in the, um, what qualifies as an institutional investor. From my understanding, he's saying, um, 1,000 properties or more. And he's not saying, that they're forced to sell, because let's say all of a sudden, let's say, that person in my chat, they're kind enough to leave a comment, but they said, well, if all of a sudden you banned, um, investment property, okay, then what's going to happen? Those homeowners are going to be forced to sell. And now you got those folks that would, that are as they're in there as renters are going to be forced to leave. So, um, yeah, let's see what MH08 says. Then you would have a lot of uninhabited homes sitting around, attracting vandalism and squatters. That's true too. Yeah, and then it's being a landlord, is not very popular nowadays, and I'm sure that being an institutional landlord, and then going back to what MH08 said as well, and that is, um, you know, I'm really skeptical of the government, because it's like, well, he proposed this, but it's like, somehow or other, I mean, their stock took a hit, but at some point, it'd almost be like, well, they might have got into it and say, well, gosh, this ain't as profitable as it seems. So who cares if he bans it? We don't want to buy anymore. And there's been a lot of investors, and even the mom and pop, the vast majority of, real estate investors are your, mom and pop landlords. It's not these big institutional investors. Now, in some markets, um, you have, like I believe Atlanta and Houston and Dallas, there's a lot more in the Sun Belt. There's a lot more investor, corporate ownership. And so do I think this will bring down home prices? Absolutely not. Now, it helps a little bit on demand in those markets, but I am not aware of a big, um, especially in our local market, of a big segment being controlled by corporate investors. So, um, let's see here. MH08 says we saw a pump and dump back in April. Yeah. So, it, uh, there's, these are the investors they're talking about, Blackstone, American Homes for Rent, Invitation Homes, Home Partners of America, and then Tricon Residential. Okay. And then from my understanding, from what I've been researching, that it's about 2% of homes out there that are owned by these institutions. So it's not a, and it's stopping them from buying more homes. It's not forcing them to sell. And again, they don't want to necessarily force folks to sell, because if they do, then they're going to disrupt a whole bunch of renters. So, um, and everything has a political angle. It just like in the video, they said that the Democrats said that they proposed this last year and it wasn't passed. Well, then now all of a sudden this year it's being proposed. And it's an election year this year. And I think, um, from a political standpoint, I know we shouldn't talk about politics, but from a political standpoint, in terms of just a political tactic, if Trump proposes it, then it takes an issue away from the left. Okay. And then there has been a big shift, politically in terms of candidates being further and further to the left. Okay, and you can say the same. Um, you have the mayor of New York, the newly elected mayor of New York, Mondami. And then there you have the newly elected mayor of Seattle. Those folks are coming in with some really, far left proposals and things like that in terms of uh, some of their housing policy. So I think Trump sees that and he's trying to get a little bit of ahead of it and then take an issue away from him. Because if he proposes it, and it's something that, if 86% of just my viewers can agree on, it's an issue that, okay, hey, let's stop them from buying any more homes. But here's the thing though, homes are already so high as they are. Um, the time to pass this would have been a couple years ago, but hindsight's 2020. So that you know is and I don't know if we have Clark is in the house, but it'd be interesting to see Clark's and then there's always the unintended consequences of things where it's like things that you don't think about that could be an issue. So that's just something out there. And then we'll bring up the article here. Cover this. Okay. And bring that to the stage. And this is from Housing Wire. Okay. President Trump said Wednesday he is moving to ban large institutional investors from buying single family homes, framing the proposal as a way to improve housing affordability. I don't necessarily think it will necessarily improve housing affordability. He did it on Truth Social. And he's talking about single family homes. They're still going to be able to buy apartments and things like that. So that's probably where they make their money anyway. And then it was Invitation Homes, Home Partners of America. And then some of these are big, big firms. And then, like I said, the private equity is getting involved with everything. And again, the devil's in the details. It didn't say, while this policy certainly is meaningful, there should be a limited near term, should be limited near term impact. Any legal ban would require legislation and likely exemptions for new construction, leaving the business model largely intact. And what they're talking about there is folks that are build to rent. Okay. And we actually have, I believe we have 2 communities in Omaha that are build to rent. Okay. And a lot of investors, again, being a landlord right now is not necessarily the most popular thing. There's a lot of mom and pop investors getting out of the business because here's the thing too. Insurance is going up. Taxes is going up. Okay. The you're those if you're a mom and pop landlord, those things are going up. All right. And you still got to make your payment. And then if those costs are going up and your tenant is not making more money, and it's clear that wages haven't gone up equally as some of these other costs, that means you're not going to be able to raise your rent because your tenant has to be able to pay it. Okay. Okay. Clark is in the house. Okay. Excellent. All right. And Clark is at ground zero on this because he's from Atlanta. So he's has a lot I should have, Clark, had you come on tonight, but I knew you was on Jackie, so I didn't want to wear you out. But if you wanted to come on, I could send you a link, but let's see here. You also need a residential law degree to be a landlord these days. That is 100%. No truer words have been spoken. Yes, and that there's a lot of, and we see it in Nebraska. There's a friend of mine, Paul Vacheski. We'll have him on the program in the next couple of weeks. But I want to get him on the program because he has a a YouTube channel called Nebraska Landlord, and he keeps tracks of some of the laws that are being proposed. And some of these laws are really not landlord friendly. Now, tenants need rights. I'm not against that. But there's also, you can um, go too far the other way. And so that's, um, but I'm not aware of, he says I'm chopping some food at the moment. Yeah, no, I'm perfectly cool with that, Clark. I just appreciate you being here. And like I said, that Atlanta is, because, I sold a couple of my rental properties a few years back, and I think only one person that bought it, and I don't know if it was a giant investor, but it was somebody from Cincinnati, purchased that particular rental property. But, um, you know, a lot of people like to demonize landlords, but I know several that um, have done really well with turning around an old property that was in disrepair. So I don't think, are there bad landlords? Yes, out there, yes. Are there good tenants out there? Of course. There's good and bad with everybody. So that's uh, the nature of the beast. But um, that right there, MAH08 is 100% spot on in terms of um, it's not like it was 30 years ago, or like when my dad was an investor, and I, growing up watching him uh, uh, with his investments, it's not like it was, 50 years ago. So it's a lot different now. It's a lot more complicated, and there's a lot more rules involved. It's just like nowadays in Nebraska, you got to register your property with the county and stuff like that. So there's a lot more regulations and things like that. So I mean, that is uh more regulations just makes it more complicated. So that's and there's a lot of things that people aren't even aware of in terms of some of the rules that are involved. So some people just thinks, well, it's there's nothing passive about it. So don't get me wrong, I understand the benefits of it. Um, but it's not, yeah, regulations have changed most definitely, and they some of the regulations wise, I think the intent is good. I hope it is. I hope the intent is good, but sometimes it's like intent and reality don't necessarily mesh well sometimes. So, uh, you know, um, what's it saying? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. So it's sometimes they want to pass something. Well, that sounds good, but it just like building a home that people want to build. The cost to build, 25% of that is regulation. Well, they're constantly adding regulations. So, okay. MH08 says, for example, when I had a squatter who declared residency, the fact that my garage didn't have utilities could have been an issue if I had pushed the wrong way. Yeah, see, so um the idea of some of this stuff right now where, and I'm really suspect of some of these organizations to help uh you know um sometimes I'm a little bit sus. I'm a little bit sus of a lot of things, but I get it. But yeah, um yeah, I don't see them passing the ban, to be honest, but I don't know. I think they will. Okay, but I think it's kind of like locking the barn door after the horse is already stolen. Um, they're probably like, yeah, they nothing's done without you know, I just I'm not a big huge trusting of politicians and stuff, but it's like, you know what? It's probably something that it's if they um if it really was going to have an impact, Clark, then I agree with you, but it's probably not going to have the impact, and it's probably like, well, we're not going to buy any more anyway, so go ahead and pass it, and they probably already talked about it up front anyway. Always follow the money, and and things like that. So yeah, it's um let's see. Okay. It'll fail by one vote. They haven't figured out who that vote is yet. That is yes, yeah. You know what? It's amazing to me is how do these folks go to Congress or get elected and then 6 years later they're worth $30 million? How does that work? I mean, uh, I don't quite get it. I don't, whenever they, yeah, it's not supposed to talk politics, and here I am just going down that road, but yeah, um, but it's probably something that if it doesn't have an impact, well, of course they'll pass it, and it doesn't have an impact. Now it might help Atlanta, Clark, if people are still buying, and then that says something about the strength of the Atlanta market, because if they're following, okay, what's going on in Atlanta, that why do they always want to, um, why are they investing in Atlanta? Well, they see something there. So that tells something about the Atlanta market. But yeah, um, if the opposite of pro is con, what is oh, that's funny. Yeah. And Clark says, yeah, they aren't really buying that much in certain areas now. The fact they were buying up other entities and merging companies like Blackstone bought Tricon. Yeah, and there's always some sort of workaround anyway. And you got to think about, well, what they'll do is they'll say, well, um, uh, you know, all of a sudden that company will have 999 homes, and then all of a sudden a new company pops up. So there's always going to be a workaround with that. Yeah, and it's just like this. You can announce that on Truth Social, and then the next day that stock tank. It'd be interesting to track which folks shorted that stock, But yeah, insider trading. Yeah, there's no. It's funny how they don't ban that. Okay, yeah, you know, um, yeah, and just because they stop buying doesn't mean they have to start selling. Right? No, um, and if they bought several years ago, well, then they already had that appreciation. So that yeah, but it's amazing to me how this all works out. I don't know. I mean, uh, and like I said, I don't see um, in some of the laws that are being proposed in some of these states and how unfriendly it is to being a landlord. You got to be careful about making it so unfriendly that you chase out all the mom and pops, and the only people that can buy are the big guys who have the attorneys on staff. That it necessarily isn't a good kind of an unintended consequence of this as well. So yeah, that's yeah, no, that's I agree with that. Um, all right, and then go ahead and hit the thumbs up for the stream if you guys would, if you don't mind. I appreciate that. And let's take a look here in terms of what's going on with interest rates. Okay, I'll share this with you. Got some good news on interest rates. Interest rates went down, and this is the 30-year fixed rate mortgage, and this was and there's a big not big, but a pretty good drop a few days ago where rates got down to really close to 6%. And some of that is, from my understanding, is they Freddie and Fannie were buying bonds, which more people purchasing bonds decreases the yield. So, and what they're trying to do, or what Trump's trying to do, is when rates come down, homes become a little more affordable, and he's trying to work on that affordability. So, um, that's it'll be interesting to see where that pans out, and then of course Jerome Powell's on his last go around in May, he's going to be replaced. So there's always going to be, it'll be interesting to see who he replaces him with. And it's an election year. So, of course, it's not good if interest rates are at 8% and nobody can do anything. But I've noticed in my own business is that when rates come down, the phone starts to ring. So, uh, this January has been very busy. So I've had a lot of folks reaching out and things like that. And uh, just talked to somebody from uh, California today, and uh, relocating, and this kind of an off topic here, but in terms of um, you know, and I know the dream is home ownership, and people have this notion that renting is throwing your money away. And to a certain extent, if you plan to be in an area for um, a long time, then renting long term is, in my opinion, not the best option. But if you're only going to be here for 2 years or 3 years, if you're relocating someplace, then I think it makes complete sense to rent. Okay. Um, yeah. And okay, great deals in Saskatchewan. Okay. I didn't know that. So I don't follow the Saskatchewan market. I mean, I would think that would has to be so cold this time of year. Like, oh Lord. Let's see what Clark says. Did you hear that Bill Pulte of FHFA urging builders to maximize their lot supply and build out their inventory? Um, I did not hear about that. And here's my thought process on this. I thought about this today and see if this makes sense, or if I'm crazy. Okay. And that is, in the last decade, everybody has been saying that we haven't built enough homes. Okay. Have we, is that true? Okay. Or were we getting rid of the old stock from the great financial crisis when we were working through so many homes that we had to get rid of? Okay. And then if a builder, why would a builder, if a builder has a buyer and can make money, why would they stop themselves from building? Does that make sense? So is it really true? And I'm just throwing it out there that, you know, is there I think we have an affordability problem, but I don't know if I mean if we didn't if we I don't know if that makes sense. Okay, so I'm not crazy. Okay, I mean, because if okay, Clark, if I'm a builder and I'm like, gosh, um, Clark is a buyer, and Clark wants to. I'm a builder. Clark is a buyer. He wants me to build a home. Why would it stop me from building a home? I would, if now if Clark, you know, is a builder and I'm a buyer, and what Clark is building, I can't buy because I can't afford it. Well, then he can't build that home because I can't afford it. So okay, so Clark, I'm glad I'm not crazy then, because it's like, okay, definitely affordability problem. Okay, good. Okay. And then MH08 says, I was poking around up there the other day. Not that cold in Southwest Saskatchewan. The extreme cold passes to the east. Homes under $50,000 Canadian. Wow. Okay. Um, but yeah, I mean, that seems odd to me because that's, you think of Montana. Um, they have good muskie fishing up in Saskatchewan, though, don't they? Um, or at least, I don't know. I mean, not you know, there's probably, I mean, I still think it'd be like 8 feet of ice, but okay. So I'm Clark. I'm not crazy then. All right. So, okay. Cause I thought about that. It's like, why on earth would if a builder can build a home and make money? Now, if a builder doesn't have a buyer, then that would make sense to hold back on that, so, um, but rates have definitely come down, which I think is good. Okay. Let's take a look at the local market here real quick. All right. Okay. No. Okay. Thanks, Clark. Okay. And MHOS, I'm pretty new to the area. Okay. So, okay. It's almost time for the every year they have the Omaha Boat Sports and Travel Show where the people come in that advertise, and always there's a couple places up there that advertise muskie fishing for up in Saskatchewan. So I always like to go into that. All right, let's take a look at the local market here, gang. This I think is uh, in terms of the December median closed sales price. Look at this. Prices were flat. Okay, so for the in Douglas and Sarpy County, the median closed sales price was flat year over year, which I think is a great thing. So if rates come down, that makes homes a little more affordable, and if the home price doesn't go up, then that's a good thing. All right. Um, Now, is it affordable to where everybody can afford? Nationally, what they say, $409,000. In Nebraska, you're looking at 315. So we're very fortunate in that aspect. Hey, son of Joxer's here tonight. So let's say if your landlord handles your maintenance properly, then renting can be a good investment. You just won't be building any home equity in the meantime. Right. And then I had that discussion with this person today where it's like she was um, saying, "Hey, I don't want to be throwing." You got to remember when you're a renter, um, or excuse me, when you own a home, you're paying taxes. Well, that money you're not getting that back. That doesn't go toward your equity. You're paying insurance. You're paying interest. Interest is not paid equally. When you first buy that home, very little of your payment goes to principal. That's why you have to be there for at least 5 years in order to build up any equity. And then what happens is if you go to sell, then there's going to be a commission that you're going to pay to sell that property. Okay. And commissions are negotiable. There's no such thing as a standard commission or anything like that. But let's just say for shins and grins, let's say the commission was 5%. Okay. Well, that's if you bought a home for $300,000 and you're paying 5%. Well, then if you turned around and sold it, if you bought it for $300,000 and you turned around and sold it the next day, and let's say the agent decided to charge you 5% commission, well, guess what? You're upside down because now that, you got to pay that 15 grand, to the agents, but you could sell it yourself, but then you don't have as much exposure. So, um, now here's the other thing too that I think is something but you're right. And then son of Joxer, you also have the maintenance, and you got to account. The older the home, the more maintenance there is. And if you're now here's the deal though, and that is the landlord handle. You look at those properties in New York where they have rent control, and you look at the maintenance of them, they just look like just nightmares. And some of those places, like, well, who would want to live there? But they have rent control. It sounds good. Oh, let's control the rent. But then it takes money to maintain a property. Okay. And yeah, but I mean, exactly. Okay. And then MHO8 says, I'll be retiring in a few years. I won't have a house payment, and that's huge. Yep, absolutely. Yes. So congratulations on that. So yeah, um, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I don't know the age of everybody in there, but if you're, you know, I don't know if you'd agree with this MHO8 or not, but boy, time slips by really fast. You're 30 years old, and the next thing you know, you're 55. So I mean, time goes by quick, and so you got to be putting a little bit away every month for retirement because, and then who knows if you're 30 years old now, um, who knows what the retirement age will be? It might be 85 by then. Uh, so I wonder if income will raise to keep up with home prices. Wishful thinking. No, I don't think it will. I don't think it will. Um, I think what you're going to see though is I think you're going to see people moving to different markets. I think, but when people move to those different markets, guess what's going to happen to those home prices? They're going to go right up too. Um, so yeah, um, you know, it is wishful thinking. I mean, inflation is a horrible, really bad thing because that just erodes people's money. And just like in Venezuela is speaking of inflation, they had just insane inflation. And so, yeah, that inflation is a hidden tax. And we went through that. Uh, Oh, we got Fred Sacco in the house. All right. Building a wall and making Iowa pay for it. Excellent info this year. Thank you. Thanks, Fred. All right. Let's see here. Life is like, you know, we have things pretty good in Nebraska because you know what? One of the, if you listen to Nebraskans, their big consternation thing is now the transfer portal. So, and the football team. So, we're very fortunate in the fact that that's kind of a first world problem is to have a football team that's terrible. So, don't get me wrong, it's not very funny, but you know, um, it's not like some of these other states. It's like, oh, geez, and Clark agrees. Time does go by quick. I thought you had a moat with Iowa. Yeah, we have a bridge over there, the Bob Carey pedestrian bridge. And, talk about that. There's not a lot of love lost there between Iowa but they've been killing us in football for the last 10 years. So that's not so good. But now going back to what I was going to chat here real quick about this, and that is prices remained flat year over year. But here's something that doesn't show up in these stats. Okay. Buyers nowadays, or at least in Nebraska or in the Omaha market, buyers are starting to get sellers to pay some of the buyers' closing costs. So let's say, and that was something 5 years ago or 3 years ago, that was unheard of. Okay. But now you're not getting as many multiple offers. So prices are not getting bid up. And buyers are starting to get concessions. So that's not showing up in the price. Okay. And then here's the other thing too. Let's look at percent of list price. Okay. And then let's take out new construction. Okay. And just look at existing. Okay. Look back in 2023, in December of 2023, 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, uh, homes were going for 100% of list price. Well, then last year they were going just for a little bit less, and that's the last list price. If you grossly overprice something and you reduce the price, that's not 99%. It's 99% of the last list price. Okay. So, and now it's 99.2. So there's a little bit of negotiation there, and buyers are getting concessions for those sellers. So if rates come down and you're getting a little bit of concession, that is a little bit of a price reduction. Not much, but it doesn't show. So it might look like home prices, and now this is for existing homes only. Okay. Existing homes up slightly. Okay. Um we'll get back to all types of construction. Okay. All right. But that's where that seller concession is in there, that it's actually a little bit of a price reduction, but you don't necessarily see it. Okay. And then, all right. Now we're okay. Idiots out walking around. I mean, they throw shade at us too. And then, the Iowans have canoes now. The boat isn't as useful as it used to be. Okay. Uh, Iowans tossed hand grenades into Minnesota. Minnesota were pulling out the pins and tossing them back. Okay. So that's all right. We'll look at let's look at homes for sale. Okay. Homes for sale. Okay. Now we're at and this is Douglas and Sarpy County. 1,991 homes on the active market, and that's up 9.4%. So we're having more supply, okay? And which means buyers have more choices. Now, I want to show supply over the last 10 years, okay? And this is homes for sale. Now, this is way back in 2015, okay? And you can see in December of 2015, we had 2,000 homes on the active market. Okay. Now we're at 1,991. So we have more homes on the active market right now than we did in 2017, 2018, and 2016. So there's a lot more inventory out there. So that's a good thing. Now I want to break this down between new construction and existing. Okay. The red is existing and the green is new construction. Okay. And you can see, let's go back and max this thing out. Okay. You can see new construction remains relatively constant. Okay. But look back here, look at the great financial crisis when we had all of that inventory. We had a big chunk and Omaha was a lot smaller back then or less population, and we had a lot more new construction. So I think some of this new construction got pushed out and sold in these later years. And that's why you didn't see. And then you can see the pandemic. Look at the pandemic. Look what happened to new construction. It went down. And then what happens now? It's going back up. So, but I think that's interesting. I don't know what's going on at this part of the graph. I think that's when we just converted over to Paragon. So that could be why that's a little bit out of wax there. But this is, now if we smooth this out for the rolling 12-month rolling average, this takes away that seasonality. And you can see back, look at the existing homes way back then. Okay. And then you can see there's a dip right here. Well, that dip, what that was when they had that tax credit. Okay. The $8,000 tax credit. All right. And Clark says with rising supply, with supply rising, especially on the resale side now, how are those resale listings looking? And it's one of those deals where they have to, good homes still get snatched up relatively quickly. All right. But if you have a home that is deferred maintenance and is not in tip top condition and not priced right, it's going to sit. And that's where folks have to adjust that price and be more realistic. It's not like the pandemic market where, you can put anything up and it's going to get 15 offers. Okay. But that's, and I'm always a big proponent when I'm working with a buyer. It's like, hey, let's make sure we're looking at the newest listings, because a new listing that's priced right in great condition still gets snacked up right away. The old stuff that's been hanging around is like a donut that's been sitting around in the break room for all day. You know what I'm saying? So anyway, we'll go back 10 years on this. Okay. Uh, and again, this is when we smooth it out with um, the 12-month rolling average. Okay. And this is homes for sale. Okay. So we can see, but you can see where new construction remains relatively constant. Okay. Um, existing and most of the sales occur with the existing market. Okay. Let's see. Spent quite a bit of time in Iowa. They're really nice people. They've helped me out a lot of time or two. Yeah, I know. We just have a good time with them in terms of with the football team and things like that. Okay. Clark says, compared to new construction, are the resale renovating the property? Or are they selling it without updated features? Some are, and then sometimes, you know, um, sometimes you can really tell when people have done it themselves and didn't. Um, I was looking at a deck a couple days ago, and you look at this deck, and it didn't have lag bolts attaching it to the house, and it was just a little bit suspect. And it was ultimately my buyer decided against it, but it was just kind of like, sometimes they dress them up, but I'm sure you have those too, Clark, where people dress things up and they think they're dressing it up, and they're just kind of um, putting lipstick on a pig type of thing. I'm not a huge fan of flipped properties. Don't shoot me in the chat, but I'm just never flipped property, they're looking, most of the time um and I get it, they're trying to make money, but to do a flip right, you got to pull permits and do all those sort of things, and darn good and well they're not pulling permits. And this gets overlooked too. If it's an older home built before 1978, you got to follow those RRP regulations, and people aren't following that. And I know there are regulations and that sort of. I know I dog on regulations, but um, you know, it's a regulation. It's out there. You should follow it. So it's like, well, that's the way it is. It's just like, nowadays you got to have before you show a home, you have to have a signed buyer broker agreement before you can show a home. So, um, but, and, here's the other thing too. A lot of those things, and that's true too. MH08, there are folks that take great pride in their work and do a great job. Okay. There are those folks out there, and those ones, you can really tell and they look great, but there's some that are like, well, this one's seen better days. So, and he did get the proper inspections. Yeah. And I think from the other aspect of that is just from a liability standpoint, because what happens if that new buyer moves in and there's a fire or something, and they can go back and trace that. So I just, that makes me cringe. So yeah, um, and I get it. I mean, um, you know, if a lot of people don't know, they'll hire a contractor or something that says, hey, the contractor will say, well, hey, if I don't have to pull a permit, I'll knock off a couple $100. Well, I want to save money, but that's not the way to do things. So, you know, that's the world according to David on that. But I mean, uh, let's go back here. Yeah, but if, a flip done right, I mean, and sometimes people don't look past things, or they're not looking at it real critically. I always look at things, as you get older, I guess you get to become dad, the deal killer. So, all right. Days on market, we'll go bar 3 years. Let's see. This is the median days on market. Okay. And this is for both new and existing. We're going to take new construction out of the mix and just go previously owned. And the median days on uh, uh, this is new construction, so that's not going to median days on market. Uh, let's see. Okay. Homes are on the market longer, and then months supply. Okay. Months supply for the Omaha market for Douglas and Sarpy County was 2.4 months of inventory, which means if no other homes came on the market, it would take 2.4 months to exhaust the current inventory. Now, that technically is still a seller's market because that's under 3 months of inventory. But it just feels, because we have more inventory in this time of year, it just feels like um, it's much more of a buyer's market, even though it's still technically a seller's market. Okay. Um, and then I want to bring up this closed sales, and I want to go 10 years out, and I want to go, um, I'm going to go rolling 12 months, and I want to show you this is um, closed sales, okay, in the last 10 years. And you can see during the pandemic, okay, even though we had such low inventory, it was such a, um, I don't know what the word I want to use on that, but homes were selling so quick. We still were selling more homes than we've ever sold, 14,000. And this is the 12-month rolling average. And then when rates went up, what did that do? We had high demand. We had low interest rates. We had high demand, and we had low supply. And what happened? We sold a bunch of homes and prices just went crazy. Then look what happened when we raised those interest rates. Look what happened to demand. We killed off demand. Okay. Um, Prices went up, interest rates went up, affordability. We weren't talking about affordability back here. Affordability wasn't a problem because sometimes you do the interest rate and at 2% interest rate, it's like, holy smokes, it's a $400,000 home and the payment's only that. Sometimes you had to double check that. Did you have that issue too, Clark, where it's like, man, I can't believe this payment is only this amount? And then when rates went up, that killed off in affordability, because affordability is not just price. A lot of people like to say that, but it's, it's affordability is the price of the home, it's the interest rate, and it's those other costs, insurance and taxes. So, okay, you had that same issue where you would calculate the payment and you're like, man, this seems ridiculously low. I can't believe it. And it was good times, and you knew it was going to end. You knew interest rates were going to go up. Now, I honestly thought, well, they'll go up to about 5 or whatever, but I didn't see them going up that much that fast. That was a shock to the system. Okay. And let's see, Clark says seller have to be patient now when selling their homes. However, they are going to go crazy when it doesn't go on. They're going to go crazy when it doesn't go under contract in 3 days. And part of that is just educating the client. And make sure that you set the right expectations. So yeah. MH08 says, I got my 3% rate in 2015. Yeah, see, that's amazing. I mean, it was, I look back and I'm like, I should have bought I should have bought a home or two, but I didn't, like anybody else. But look what happened to demand fell down. Okay. We were selling fewer homes, sales tanked, but there's always going to be a market out there. But we were below, the 2015 level right here. But now look what's happening. Rates have gone down and they're starting to come back. And so what's happening? The sales are increasing. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense for folks. Okay. This is, again, the red is existing. The green is new construction. And do you see how the green says relatively stable? Okay. Where the number of homes tanked was existing. So existing went down. Okay. But new construction stayed relatively the same. Okay. And this is, but I think these charts are really fascinating on that. So, and then let's see, let's look at closed price. Okay. This is the median closed sales price. And this to me is sometimes shocking to look at some of this. 10 years ago, a previously owned home was $146,000. New construction was $269,000. And then look where it's at now. New construction 425,790, and a previously owned home is at 305. And this is a 12-month rolling average. And you can see where in July of 2023, what happened? New construction peaked, okay? And then new construction backed off a little bit, because what happens when rates go up, builders adjust and they build a little bit smaller home, or they sell a little bit more smaller homes. So that's what happens. And there's some builders that say, hey, you know what? I'm not building, because builders are, the whole goal behind building a home, if you're a builder, is to make money. They don't do it out of charity. They do it because they want to make money, and there got to be a profit in it. And they got to build what is, they have to have a market for what they build. Okay. So anyway. All right. Let's see, closed sales. And you can look at average price or median closed sales price. I like to look at median, because in that, on a month with fewer sales, I just like looking at median closed sales price. Days on market. Look at the, let's see, let's go lined. Okay. This is new construction, and you really can't look at days on market for new construction, because that's not a good number in terms of, because a lot of times what will happen is somebody will contract with a builder. The builder will put it in the MLS and leave it as an active listing in order to just market it. So you got to kind of be careful at looking at median days on market for new construction. And then also, something will be active in the MLS, but it'll be at lot stage or frame stage. So that's a little bit misleading when you look at days on market for new construction. That can be a little bit, and you got to read through that with any stat that you're looking at and be aware of that. So it's just like when you hear people talk about, well, foreclosures are skyrocketing. Well, compared to the pandemic, yes, but it's not like it was, during the great financial crisis. Okay. So, got to kind of read into this a little bit more, and you got to study the market too. I mean, I enjoy this. So to me, this is a lot of fun looking at this. All right. Any other questions or anything else going on tonight that we want to look at or see? Let's look at the inflation rate. We'll look at this. I'll share this here. This is the United States inflation rate. Okay. If you look at that October, there's no data because of the government shutdown. But you had 3% in September, and then it's come down a little bit. I don't know where, gas has come down. I've noticed that, gasoline and stuff like that. So that's good. I mean, there's, when something's not going up in price, at least if you're not making more money, your dollar at least goes a little bit further. I mean, no, and here's the thing with whenever you're thinking about whoever's in office, I don't care who it is. If it's a Democrat in office, half the country thinks he's doing terrible. And then if there's a Republican in office, half the country thinks he's doing terrible. So there's always going to be, and there's going to be some people that are just, no matter what, they're going to be unhappy no matter what. And then here's the other thing too. You got to make your own economy, where it's like, if you're waiting for the government to come bail you out, good luck with that, so um, yeah, keep bringing inflation down. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, um, I think the other thing that's really telling in terms of this affordability is you don't hear a lot of tariff talk right now, which, with inflation going, with affordability being an issue, you know, a tariff is a tax as well because it raises the consumer pays that tax. The consumer pays that. So I mean, I think, and it's all about getting elected. All these guys want to get reelected and everything. And Trump wants to make sure that he maintains control of the House, because if he doesn't contain, if the Democrats take the House and it's an off-year election, typically the party not in power gains more seats in the House, and there's not he doesn't have that many seats to give on that. Then you'll have a whole bunch of investigations and all that sort of thing, and they all investigate each other anyway, and they're all crooked anyway. But anyway, that'll be the end of you know and then they'll, after the election, then the 2028 election cycle starts. So, but let's see, and then the BLS. Let's look at the Bureau of Labor and Statistics. I thought I'd share this tonight too. This is, I don't know how to get rid of that there. Hide that bar. Okay. This is unemployment for the United States. Unemployment went up September. Now this says for updated December 30th. Okay. But then when you look at this, here it says September 2025. So I don't know if I'm sure of this, but they have the unemployment rate for the United States at 4.3%, and that's up from 2024. Okay. So when unemployment goes up, even though that's bad, that's actually kind of good if you're in the market to buy a home, because as long as you have a job, then that's deflationary. That's if unemployment heats up, or if what I'm trying to say is when there's more jobs, that's more buyers, that's more competition. But when unemployment increases, that's less pressure on the housing market. And so, this is Omaha, Douglas County. Still, we're well below the national average. Okay. Douglas County is at 3.1%. So unemployment went up a little bit. Okay. Our friends over in Council Bluffs, I don't know what happened here, but their unemployment jumped up quite a bit. Sarpy County is still below 3%. And then these are wages, average weekly wages for all industries by county. And maybe this is something that I should bring to people's attention as well. And you can see that how Douglas County compares to Council Bluffs and, Douglas County, and then Sarpy County as well. So anyway, here's a good question. What do you think about Trump wanting to buy $200 billion in mortgage-backed securities? I think the intent is to bring down interest rates. Okay. So I think, if it brings down, if it enables folks to buy a few more buy some homes, and it's a little bit, helps with a little bit of affordability, I think that's not a bad thing. It's still, is it add to the deficit? But yeah, I mean, so there's good and bad. What's your thoughts on that, Clark? Where are you stand on that? I mean, I like to see interest rates come down. And he's using Fannie and Freddie, which are in conservatorship, but he's spending their money. So it's like, well, not sure if they would spend that money if they weren't in conservatorship, but don't think he can get Powell to do that. And I think they did that. Didn't they do that during the late, in Obama and Trump 1.0 is they bought a lot of mortgage-backed securities. That's what kept those interest rates long for so long. We were in the four, and again, it was one of those things where it's kind of like, gosh, got so used to it that it was kind of like you're just, oh, this is what interest rates are, and then it went down to that 2% range, and it was like, good grief, you know. Yeah, I see what he's trying to do, but bring the rates down, but I don't want it to start a frenzy again in the market. And that's true too. I mean, so, because here's the thing, if rates come down too much, what's going to happen? It's going to heat the market back up again and increase those buyers. So yeah, and I can already tell, because these folks that are on the sidelines, they're sidelined. They want to buy, they just can't. So the minute it becomes, that's why this crash thing is not going to happen, is because the minute they have when rates come down, the buyers come back into the market. And when buyers come back on the market, it heats up demand. So that's why this crash thing, I think it's foolish for folks to think that, okay, prices are going to crash. And I know there's a YouTuber out there, and here's the other thing too, that's all entertainment, and they do it to get clicks. I get it, but a 38% correction, and the median sale price is $409,000, but that doesn't mean that entry level buyer is buying that that home. You got to have a starter home. You're going to have to start. You're not going to jump into, if you're living in a $500,000 home with your parents, and then you're just starting out in life, you're not going to start out in a same home, So, oh yeah, good. I need my 300. Yeah. I need 320 million for my place in Aspen. Yes. So yeah, that's your Airbnb, right? Because you only stay there 2 weeks out of the year. And then yeah. All right, gang. Well, I tell you what, that's tonight's show for you. And we'll hey, be sure to go out there and give old Clark a like as well. And if you don't mind subscribing to the channel, we're putting some, oh, I have to tell you something funny. This is kind of funny. I come home and my son goes, Dad, you're on TikTok. Somebody was had a little fun. They and Dad, it's it's like, Dad, you're becoming a meme on TikTok or whatever, because there's some guy out there that was he had a little bit of fun at my expense, but it is some of the I should try to find it here real quick. Let me see if I can find it. You guys might get a kick out of this here. Let me see. Let's see here. Let's see. Hold on a second. Let me see if I can find it here. Okay. Okay. This will be we'll end the show with this. Okay. Somebody on TikTok said, let's see here. How do I get rid of that? Oh. Okay. Somebody on TikTok grabbed a hold of my channel and then played some music to it. And then all these folks made comments on my videos and my thumbnails and what's going on with the Omaha housing market. This can't be that crazy, son. And then look at that. It got 6,000 shares. So, and a lot of comments. Okay. The comments were pretty hilarious. I don't know if you can see that or not, but some of these comments are pretty funny. Some of them I actually had to I didn't quite understand what they said, so I had to chat GPT it to understand their slang or whatnot. And then somebody liked my photo so much that they That's not me. That's somebody else, but they took my photo. So they're having a little bit of fun there. And then they said real footage of the world's greatest economic minds coming together to predict the future of the Omaha housing market. And, and then this is this is pretty funny. He's actually putting effort into these thumbnails too. Yeah. So and then thumbnails, fire at ASL, and then the type of video my dad watches. Okay. And then somebody made a comment, and then the other person that commented, and they must be all of like 10 or whatnot. And it was like on TV. And for a big chunk of my audience, you know, is older. You know, I'm like, hey, your dad has good taste in video in content. Anyway, I thought that was kind of fun, but it's now up to it like that right now is at 6,000 shares. But this morning I checked it because it's always like uh it was up to 15,000 shares. So it was kind of fun. So I don't know if you can find it on this is the fella that's doing it, this size strop 4. I don't know if how to say that, but that's who the if you're looking for it, Google that fella right there, and then you can find it. Okay. And but it's kind of fun. Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny, but my son pointed that out to me. And but anyway, I thought you guys would get a kick out of that. But so I don't even have a TikTok. I mean, I have a TikTok account, but I don't understand TikTok, so I don't um so I don't do the TikTok thing. But anyway, that's all kind of good. But um Clark like that. And then a good show tonight. Thank you, Clark. I appreciate it. And then all right, got some thumbs ups and some hearts, and then a TikTok meme. So yeah, that's I don't have one video on TikTok except that one, and it's doing quite well. So anyway, I mean that guy's video is doing well, but he can and then what I did notice on my analytics on my YouTube channel, all of a sudden I've got some crazy comments where it's like that video, this one where this market update one. Let me show it to you here. Share this tab. Okay. This video right here, all of a sudden the views on it spiked because it's coming off of that TikTok meme thing. So anyway, it's all good, but it was kind of fun. But anyway, everybody, I want to thank you for showing up again tonight. I appreciate it. Always have a good time, Clark. Thank you very much. And MH08 and Joxer and James and son of Joxer and Fred and everybody stopping by. I appreciate everybody. So you guys have a good evening. We'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.